Brian. How are you today?
Great, Joyce. How are you?
Good, good. Thank gosh it's Friday. I know I'm looking forward to the weekend. Um, so thank you for coming back to talk to us again. Like to talk about, since it is February and tax season and people are getting their tax returns done, how do you go about, how would a taxpayer go about finding a good tax preparer?
Well, think of it the same way you would do if you were choosing a doctor or a dentist or a wedding photographer. You're
Okay.
not just going to pick the first name you see in a search engine or in the yellow pages or some ad on the street. You want to ask your friends and family, ask your coworkers, see who they use, someone they trust, someone who has a reputation in the community, someone who's going to be around all tax season and also through the rest of the year.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because if you get a notice from the IRS, you're going to want that tax preparer to be able to help you with it.
Absolutely. There
Yeah.
we do see some return preparers really busy during filing season and then they just move on, sometimes even to another state. And when
Oh,
you try to
wow. Okay.
locate them, you can't even find them.
Wow. Okay. All right. Do you know about how many taxpayers hire a professional to prepare their tax returns?
It's yes, more than half. We're at about
Wow.
55%. I mean,
Okay.
taxes are complicated and depending on your situation, it's a lot easier just to hire a professional. I mean, the same thing. Some people don't do electricity at their house or clean their pool or repair appliances. It just depends what your level of financial knowledge is, whether you decide to hire a paid tax return preparer.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So, you had mentioned before that some tax preparers are really busy during tax season, and then you can't seem to find them outside of tax season, or they move on. So, what are some of the red flags that people can look out for when they're working with a tax preparer?
So there's several red flags. One of them is any return preparer who promises a big refund and they haven't even seen your personal information. You may owe
Okay.
money. How do they know you're going to get a big refund? Second thing we see is return preparers who base their fees on a percentage of your tax refund. You might think that's fair, but it's a built in incentive for them to pad your tax return
Mm.
with deductions you're not and credits that you're not entitled to. And then I would say, lastly, look out for the return preparers who create fake businesses. They do this
Ah,
right now. They'll create a fake Schedule C. It's basically a small business, like or maybe like a home business, and they'll report huge losses. And then those losses will offset your W 2 or your wage income.
okay.
And it basically increases your refund. And
Got
it
it.
causes a lot of headaches because if you're ever audited by the IRS or the Arizona Department of Revenue, they're going to ask you to substantiate those expenses. And if you can't,
Right.
you're going to be paying the bill. The return preparer doesn't foot the bill. You as the
Right.
taxpayer do.
Right. Right. And then you're going to get charged interest and penalties and on top of it, right?
Yes.
Or yeah,
Yes.
because there would be a penalty for not paying everything on time, I think.
You don't want to go down that road.
Okay.
I always tell people you sleep much better at night when you filed an accurate tax return. But
Yes.
that's why it's also very important for you to review the return with your return preparer. A lot of return preparers finish your return and they just file it, and they might give you a copy either by paper or a digital PDF. But a good preparer is going to go through every single page to make sure you understand everything that's on the return.
That makes sense because we personally have a tax preparer, and when he gets done with our taxes, we set up a meeting and we go in and meet with him, and he goes through things that have changed during the year. If something's new, he goes through how it was reported and answers any questions we have. And while I know a little bit about taxes and the tax return, um, there are certain things that you might not know a lot about them, but your gut might be telling you this just doesn't make sense, and so then that's why it's always good to, because then you could ask that question and then they can explain it, and then hopefully it would make more sense to you.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of return preparers right now here in Arizona who file returns. And when we show some of these taxpayers, these businesses that are on their tax return, they'll say, I've never heard of that business. I never provided that information. I don't even do that business.
Wow.
And it's the first time they've seen it is when we show them during our criminal investigation of the return preparer.
Wow. Okay. And then it's unfortunate because then that affects their taxes and they're going to end up owing more money. And yeah, that's just a snowball effect. That you're right. It's you sleep better at night when you know your tax return's done right. That could be a line,
It can be a t-shirt, you
a
know?
t-shirt. There you go. You could have a side business.
There we go.
Oh, all right. Let's see. So we talked about the fake businesses and what to look for when you're looking to hire a tax preparer. What about, I've heard this term ghost preparers. What are they?
So it's a term that it's pretty recent. And think of it this way: it's a return preparer who basically disappears, and you can't find them, and the IRS can't find them because they don't put their name on their work. So anybody can
Uh,
be a return preparer, but if you are paid to be a preparer, you have to put your name on the return, and you have to put what's called a PTIN, Prepare Tax Identification Number.
okay,
So you have to ask the question, why are they not willing to stand behind their work?
true.
It'd be like going to an auto mechanic and they don't want to give you an invoice because they don't want to stand behind their work. These
Right.
ghost
Okay.
preparers do not want to put their name on the return. Sometimes they don't want to buy the professional software. They're just trying to use like free over the counter software. Um, but for a variety of reasons, they don't put their name on the tax return. If someone doesn't, if you pay someone to prepare the return and they don't sign it, it's time to go find a new preparer.
Got it. All right. That makes total sense when you equate it to different areas of your life, but yeah, you definitely want someone that's going to stand behind their work because you're paying them to do something that you don't feel comfortable doing or you don't know how to do. And so you're paying them to do it correctly. And as a professional, you would hope that they would want to stand behind their work. So yeah, that's good information. Um, you guys, the IRS wants taxpayers to file electronically versus mailing. Is there a specific reason for that? Is it just reducing paper or?
Many reasons. One of it, it's more accurate. You're going to make less errors. It won't get lost in the mail. If
Mm,
you combine it with direct deposit, electronic filing, you'll get your refund much faster.
got it.
Paper returns have to be manually input into our system.
Oh,
So it costs the government more money. It slows things down. We have to hire more employees to do that. And then if you saw what happened during the COVID pandemic, there were just thousands of, not millions of unprocessed tax returns sitting in offices because you had
mm,
IRS employees working from home. It caused all kinds of problems. So
wow.
we're
Okay.
over 90% right now. Ideally, we'd like to get to 100, and we're trending in
Okay.
that direction. But for all the reasons I just mentioned, electronic filing is the best way to go.
Okay. All right. Does it matter how complicated your return is, how thick your return is? Any return can be filed electronically with the IRS?
Yeah, so all 1040s can be filed electronically. Even amended returns can be filed electronically now.
Okay.
That used to
Right.
be the case where the amended returns had to be done on paper, but we're even moving in that direction. I do believe there are some returns that might still be paper, some very specific returns. But for the vast majority of people who file just your standard 1040, doesn't matter how long or how short that return is, it can be filed electronically.
Okay. All right. And then when someone files it electronically, do they get a notification back from the IRS saying that we've received the return, and so you can have that as your document that you filed the return?
Yes, absolutely, and that's what's nice too. Or that whatever software company you use, it'll say we've transmitted this return. Then they'll say it was accepted by the IRS or it was
Okay,
accepted by the state of Arizona. So that gives you some extra assurance that you've done things correctly. And
okay,
then it'll also reject your return if you're missing something major, like a social security number or a dependent or things like that.
okay. All right, and then if somebody owes money on their return and they're filing electronically, I'm guessing they could just go to the instructions and it'll tell them how they can make their payment, whether it's electronically or mailing in a check?
Right. You'll be presented with several options, which
Okay.
is nice. And then if you don't have the money for some reason, the IRS, you can automatically set up a payment plan and
Oh, okay.
spread what you this the tax over a certain number of months. So there's
Got it.
multiple options, and the whatever whoever you use to prepare that return, it'll present those options for you.
Nice. Okay. All right. Very good. So, I can't think of any other questions. Is there any other information that you wanted to add to what you've already talked about?
Yeah, I want to put a plug in there for our website,
Okay.
irs.gov. It's a great website. You can actually file on irs.gov.
Oh, okay.
So for anyone making $73,000 or less, there's something called IRS Free File where you go on there and you choose one of the companies to process your return for you, and it'll walk you through it. And then
Okay.
also, irs.gov has a directory of return preparers. So
Oh,
let's say you
okay.
were looking for a return preparer, you can go into our directory on the website and see what their credentials are. It would give you another option to find a paid return preparer.
That's great. And I'm sure you can search by city and state or zip code and see who's in your area. That's great. I didn't know that you guys kept a list online of the tax preparers. That's great. And I thought of a question while you were talking, and I think this happened the last time we talked. It went right out of my head as soon as it came in. I can't think of it, so maybe
All
we'll
right.
the
We
next
covered
time we
a,
talk.
we covered a lot of ground.
We did. We
Gave your
did.
gave the
So
viewers plenty of things to think about.
yes, and I think it's good timing, because 1099s and W-2s all had to be sent out by the end of January. And so if
Yep.
people haven't already received them, they should be getting them any day, and they're going to be looking to get their returns filed. So I know what the question is. You mentioned the free tax service. You can file your tax return for free on irs.gov if you make under $73,000. Is it just your initial return that you can file that way, or if you have to amend your return, can you do the amended return on there?
I think you can do. Yeah, I think amended return can be done as well. And then
Okay,
the one last thing I wanted to just include is
sure.
we kind of scared people a little bit about some of these shady return
Oh,
preparers that are out
okay.
there. I just want to close and say the vast majority of tax return preparers out there are honest, they're ethical, they do a great job. So if there's about 160 million returns filed every year, 55% are by paid preparers. So we're talking 80 million plus returns are filed, and most of them, I mean, the vast majority, you have nothing to worry about. What we really
Right,
stress is just these fly by night return preparers who show up in town promising huge refunds just to get people in the door. That's what we really focus our energy on telling
right.
people about.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. With any profession, there's going to be a few bad apples, but it doesn't speak to the whole profession and all the other professionals in that area. So, well, thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it. We're going to get this out quickly so people can have this information before, so they can use it when they're getting ready to file their 22 returns.
All right.
So,
Thank you, Joyce. It's always a
all right.
pleasure.